Welcome back to Coda Conversations, everybody. I got Brian Goodspeed here today, man. Welcome back, man.
Man, what's good? What's good, man?
And it's always good to have you on the show. Yeah,
Absolutely.
man. Just get it. Oh, go ahead, go ahead.
Nah, I was just gonna say, man. I mean, at this point, I feel like I'm just a normal. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, most definitely, man. You're a regular now, so yeah, man. What's been new with your life?
Man, nothing much, man. Just working, man. Just grinding, getting acclimated to my new job, and been there for a few months now. So, I mean, things are picking up. Got a project that I'm working on exclusively. Like I'm leading the project, and kind of making it my own. I'm designer, architect, everything. So it's
Oh
been
man,
pretty cool. What about
yeah,
you,
it's
man?
pretty, yeah, man. Just working and doing this podcast thing, man. But yeah, like that point you mentioned, it's pretty interesting because when I came on to this job, I came on as like a senior Angular developer,
Hmm.
and now I'm pretty much doing like a lot of the like a lot of leadership stuff on the front end too. So it seems like you're just gonna naturally fall into the level you're supposed to be at. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, usually when I get into a job, it's always that weird little space where you're trying to, feel like where you at and where you going. And once you get
Yeah.
comfortable, man, it's smooth sailing from there. I think for the most part, for me, I like to try to find my lane because when you come into a new position, there's always people that already hold a particular position or a particular lane, and you don't want to step on anybody's toes. You
Right.
want to
Right.
just kind of come in and get in where you fit in, for the lack of better words. But yeah, I've been doing my thing, man. I've been doing my thing. I feel like I'm making a real impact.
Oh man, that's definitely good to hear. That was a great point you made about once you come in, you got to kind of tiptoe around a little bit to, you
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? You can't push everybody out the way and say I'm here. You got to kind of
Right.
carefully
Like
navigate.
make way. I'm coming through.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to make a splash, but not too much of a splash where some other people getting, annoyed by it or something like that.
Yeah.
But I
Exactly.
think it's a cool balance. It's one of those things where you don't want to overstep your boundaries, but you also want to show initiative and show that you
Yeah.
have the ability to make your own lane.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to be like proactive, but you can't just take over stuff that's that somebody's already deeply rooted into. So
Hmm.
this is kind of
Yeah.
like a fine line you have to walk.
Yeah. Like, do you like sometimes when I come into a new position, it's like I think I've transitioned maybe about 5 or 6 times in my career. I've been doing this for like 10 plus years, coding and developing,
Mm.
and my transition from like a developer, like just being a developer, to being more of a leader or a mentor to other developers. Even when we worked together, right? Like that
Yeah.
was early in my career. Like I wasn't in the game that long, but that's kind of an example of what I'm talking about, where
Yeah.
I come in and I just find my space and my lane. And I think that's important for developers to not get stagnant into just being whatever your position says you are. So
Yeah.
just because you come in as, and I don't really agree with the whole junior, senior, all that stuff. You know what you
Mhm.
know. You're
Yeah.
valuable as what you bring to the company or to the project. And so I don't really fall in line with the whole junior, senior, because some people say, what you think? Like your first couple years, you're an associate. After
Yeah.
about a
Yeah.
year or two, you can step into junior, and then maybe after 5 years or so, you can become a senior. That's not the case.
Yeah.
I've seen
Yeah.
people super talented at what is supposed to be junior level. Like that
Right.
ain't.
Right.
Well, did you feel more like a junior or a senior, or like how did you feel when you came into the industry?
Yeah. I mean, the first year, obviously, I was like, I didn't really know nothing, so it was a junior. So
Just come in wide eyed.
right.
Yeah,
Because we was also using brand new technologies.
yeah,
Angular
yeah.
2 was in beta, so
Right,
we
right.
we got onto that bandwagon as soon as it was starting. So
Yeah.
that was completely new for me because before that, I think I was doing Angular JS or some of the experimenting with some of the other frameworks.
Hmm.
And then, Angular 2 is a completely different thing, but I really liked it. But yeah, I was like a junior. But then on my second job, I was doing pretty much like senior level type work, like taking over projects, starting this new project from scratch because, even though I only had a year of experience, um, Angular 2 was so new that I've had as much experience with it as anybody else.
Yeah. But what really makes a senior though, right? Like, is it possible? Like, because I think that what make a senior is your ability to be autonomous. Number one,
Yeah,
you don't need a lot of micromanaging. You don't need a lot of direction. Basically, you get the requirements, and maybe even sometimes be able to develop said requirements and just roll with it and get the job done.
right, right.
Versus tenure, like right, like because
Yeah,
obviously with more experience, more tenure, you develop these skills over time. But if you have that ability innately, does time supersede ability, or can you say somebody who just came out of training or something like that, or just got their degree can come out a senior? Is that possible?
I mean, I think at least if they're brand new, they need to at least have like a year or so of proving what they can do because they have no track record. But after that, it should be like whatever you're able to do because if you're there for 10 years and you don't know what's going on, you can't get anything done. Then
Yeah,
how
or
are
you just
how are you a
automatically
senior?
right. Yeah, man, I don't know how I feel about that, man. I think that's an injustice in our industry, really. Like, why is it possible for somebody to be there a certain amount of time and automatically get the accolades or the opportunities for higher pay or uh, more responsibility if they don't know more than somebody who just came in, as far as your talent as a developer? Because I think a lot of people just look at it as, oh, anybody can be a developer. Well, to a certain extent, like that's like saying anybody can be a cook, but
Right,
anybody can't be a great cook, right? Like, you can't just say just because you know a language or quote unquote how to code that you're a great developer. I think that it's way bigger than that, and it's never been time based for me because I feel like I climbed the ranks super fast. Like,
right, right.
I felt like I was a senior in my second role. My first role,
Yeah,
um, I was literally like just in training for like 3 or 4 months. We didn't do anything. It was my
right,
first
right,
entry level job, and I couldn't tell you, how to actually develop. I knew how to code. I can't tell you how to develop.
right,
And
right,
it quickly became apparent to me that chasing bugs or triaging little errors or little small um, uh, projects like, oh, add a button here or change the text there, like that's super trivial. That's not developing, that's just coding, right?
right, right,
But by the time I got to my second position where we met, that that was developing, where
right,
they
right,
really depended on me to just come in and just hit the ground rolling and produce, like no uh, real direction or like no real like strict requirements. Just like, hey, this is what we need, do it. And
right.
I feel like that's when I actually stepped into my role, and I didn't even know my value then. It took me a while to actually gain an understanding of how valuable what I was providing was.
Right. Yeah, sometimes it just takes time to really see the, the context of what you're doing because, like
Absolutely.
you say, there's no clear delineation. It's not like, okay, you take this test and you scored a 90, now you're a senior developer. Like, no,
Right.
it just
Yeah.
differs from company to company. But, just from a vague definition, a senior is, like you mentioned, pretty much autonomous. They say, hey, I need something done. You're able to research it. You're able to get it done, implement it. And, from there, when you move up to leadership is when you start overlooking the work of others and kind of managing them, distributing
Right.
work and taking on stuff outside of developing.
Yeah. So when you talk about that differentiation between these different levels,
Hmm.
um, then you start thinking about compensation and what that actually means to
Yeah.
what you're providing, right? So obviously, when you come in, you're not taking on a senior role. Yes, we kind of see the different levels of compensation when it comes to that. do you really feel like the correlation between the position or quote unquote title is like on par with what the compensation jumps or differences are?
Not really, because from different companies, they'll pay you different amounts. Like for
Right.
example, when I went to Broadcom, I was getting 160K stock, all of that kind of stuff. So my real compensation was probably over 200K, but I was also at that same time offered, I was like a staff engineer role.
Mm-hmm.
So but they were only able to pay me 150K with no stock and any of the other stuff because of smaller
Right.
companies. So there's no correlation from company to company. It all comes down to what you're able to negotiate.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see that because when I look at compensation, obviously it's different from one company to the next.
Yeah,
But if you look at it from within the same company, right? Like, so
yeah,
for let's not say talk about like a FANG company or nothing like that. Let's talk about like baseline, right?
yeah,
I
yeah,
think that when we came in, entry level was 50-ish K,
yeah,
something along those lines. It's probably much more now. I haven't really looked at entry level positions, but I would assume it's a little more now. But even when we first started, like when you come in starting at like 50, 60K, whatever,
mm,
like that next jump up, you would only assume that it would be maybe 10, 20K.
yeah.
But my first jump was almost double that. You know
You're
what I
right.
mean? When I
Yeah,
went from a theoretical junior to a senior, like it doubled. But now that jump doesn't like mean the same thing. Like you
yeah.
go
Like, oh,
from junior to senior, you're not getting double. And even when you go from senior to lead, you're definitely not getting double,
right,
right?
right.
Because I've done it, right? And I think that yes, it does vary from company to company because the amount of resources that a company has to be able to pay you is different from company to company. Like
Right,
obviously a
right.
big FANG company can pay you more than some new, startup who funding isn't just quite there yet. So I just think that it needs to be more. I don't want to say baseline. It's kind of like how quarterbacks are right now in the NFL.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
it's not necessarily about your talent more or less than it is that, hey, it's just your time. It's your
yeah,
chance to come up. And so now you just get this amount of money, regardless of whether you proven that you can do anything or not.
yeah. You get what you negotiate for. You get what the market can bear. So.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
'Cause
that's a lost art is negotiation. Like we expect companies to give us this amount, but if you don't negotiate, you're gonna get the least that they want to offer you.
yeah. And you can find yourself in different positions. I think the best time to actually move is when you already have something, right?
Yeah,
The pressure isn't so stringent on you when you already have money coming in versus, oh, I need a job versus I'm just looking. You're going to find your best opportunities, in my opinion, while you are already employed, which most people don't look during those
exactly,
time frames.
exactly. What when you're already employed, you're not under pressure, so you don't have to accept the first offer they give you because I'm running low on money, so I just need something.
Right, right,
And
right.
the second thing is that you're also able to negotiate with your current company and then create this bidding war like, hey, this company is about to offer me 170. Can you match? Then your company's like, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, we can match. Then you take it back to them. Hey, my company, I might just stay here because my company said they could do 170. Okay, well, we could do 175.
absolutely. Yeah,
So
I actually experienced that personally in my first real role, like not my entry level, my second one. That was an eye-opening experience, right? Like
yeah,
you don't really know your worth until you push your limits. So I was at like 60K, right?
yeah,
And that's when I said I got that first jump. Originally, they was like, okay, we'll give you 80, right? Which was already to me at the time a young, family, taking care of a family, like just a young guy, just getting it, getting his bearings in the industry. I'm like, okay, cool, cool, cool. This was, 8, years ago. That was a lot then for me. And so when I looked at that going from 60 to 80, I was like, oh yeah. But then I had a opportunity outside of my company and they were offering me I think it was 125 or 120, somewhere in there. I think it was 125. And when I told my company that I got another offer somewhere else, it was like they were so quick. I had literally just got the 80, right?
Right, right, right.
A month later, they're willing to give me 120. How is that even possible, right?
Yep.
What that tells me is that my worth or my value was already at 120, probably before they get not probably before they gave me the 80, right?
Right.
But
Yep.
I didn't have any context of negotiation or what my worth is. And so when we talk about staying, um, for the lack of better words, like true to your game, like this is a game at the end of the day.
Yep.
Y'all playing the game. How much you willing to pay? How much are you willing to do? And so you can play this, back and forth, back and forth. And obviously it's not like an everyday thing, but it should happen often enough for you to feel satisfied or valuable in what you're doing, because it is valuable.
Right. Yeah, like you mentioned, it's a game because, like you say, like they was able to pay you 40K more just a couple of months later or a month later,
Right.
and
Right.
did you? It's not like in a month
I was
your
doing something
responsibility.
crazy different, right?
Yeah, you're pretty much doing the same thing, but your value was worth that, but you didn't have the leverage to negotiate the 120
Mm-hmm.
in.
Yeah.
Once you had that crowbar, you could pry that extra 40K out of them.
Right.
So,
And
you know,
that was a very eye-opening experience. But I feel like it's hard to actually apply that pressure, especially when you're comfortable, right?
right.
Because I'm gonna be honest, man, when I that was the first time I reached six figures, right?
Yeah.
And for me, that was a huge jump in my income. But the good thing is that I already had a solid mindset on how to manage money, right? And
Yeah.
so when I think about managing six figures for the first time, because now you can actually come out and your first job could potentially be six figures, right?
Yeah.
As a developer, if you get with the right company, you get the right opportunity, you can come right out, right out of school, or in your case, you didn't even pursue an actual degree in this field and still landed a good opportunity and job in this field. So you don't even necessarily have to go to school for development. Just to be
Right.
clear. Um, However, when you make that huge jump in your income, that's a lot to take in. As if you go from 60K to 120, you doubling your income. What do you do with that? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like back, it's like your mind is blown like instantly.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, 'cause
What
that's
did you do with your first six figures? Like when you got your first six figure opportunity, like
mm.
how did that change you or your lifestyle?
I mean, I'm pretty much doing the same thing, man, but you get a slightly better version of what you already had. So, I
You
got the
supersize it.
95. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, remember we used to go like Buffalo Wild Wings and all this other
Yeah.
stuff. It's like,
Yeah, we used to
well, let
always
me
wait
get
for that little deal, like get
yeah,
water instead of a soda.
right. Yeah, you
Yeah,
get the 6 piece and you counting like whether I don't want to spend 8, I just want to spend six
right.
dollars a day.
Like,
You
you
know,
want fries with that? Oh no, no fries.
right.
I'm good. Just the wings.
Yeah,
And that's what
exactly.
60K do for you, right?
And then once you get the 95, 100K, it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, just give me the 8 piece. I
Yeah,
ain't
give
even
me the
thinking about
AP, man. Matter of fact, give me
yeah.
two drinks.
But I don't feel like my life really changed that much though.
Mm. So,
Like,
so when you think about like your mindset, right?
mm,
Because for me, I didn't change in my mindset, but it did empower me though, right? Like I felt like it boosted my confidence. It
yeah,
boosted my, what I thought of myself in the industry. Like I didn't feel like I was a nobody. I felt
right, right.
like then we used to joke about it all the time. Like, man, when you were a developer, 8 years ago or so, you felt like a rock star, man. Like, man,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
doing it because a lot of your peers and people around you, they're not making six figures. And I'm not saying six
yeah,
figures is just like some exorbitant amount of money, but like to the average Joe, that's doing it. That's making it, right?
yeah,
So to me, it came with a slight reality check. Not that it changed my life, but I needed to understand how to manage this new level of income and not, fall victim to,
Yeah.
the influx of cash flow.
Yeah, I mean, because realistically, once you make six figures, your spending can easily scale with that, and you're in the exact same place. You're in debt because you're buying all kinds of crazy stuff. You buy this 100K car and
Right,
three
right,
thousand dollar condo or something,
right,
and you know what I'm saying. You're living paycheck to paycheck again. So
right.
just because you hit six figures doesn't mean that, oh wow, you're living in a whole nother reality. What's crazy is even people with millions of dollars, they go
Can be.
broke too.
Oh yeah, I was just thinking that, like, the amount of money that you make don't determine whether you are broke or not. It's the
Yep.
amount of money that you can maintain or keep, right?
Yep.
So you can be making 300K and still be living beyond your means. Yeah, you might be driving a nicer car, you might be living in a nicer home or a nicer area, you might eat nicer food, but at the end of the day, you're still struggling. You're still
Right.
paycheck to paycheck. And so I think the most important thing that you can do when you get an increase in income is to stay at the same, try your best to
Yeah.
just stay at the same level. Like, don't drastically change your lifestyle, right? If you were
Exactly.
driving a Honda Accord before six figures, keep driving that Honda Accord. If you were living
Yeah.
in a two bed or three bed two bed, keep living in that three bed two bed or that apartment, that whatever. Keep doing what you were already doing, and then allow yourself to get acclimated to this level of income, and then try to find ways to leverage that, and then be smart with it, right? Start investing,
Yeah.
start looking for a new income opportunities, turn that money into more money. That's the smartest thing to do.
Right. Like there's a psychological factor to it. Like you make all this extra money and you start dabbling with different things like, oh, I'm gonna buy this high end set of speakers, I'm gonna buy this nice car, but realistically the first time you get it, it's like, oh man, this is what I always wanted. Then week later it's just like, oh okay, this is boring, let me get
Right.
something else. Your
Exactly.
mind adjusts really
Yeah.
quickly to the new level of stuff, so you can get
Yeah.
trapped.
I think that's just human nature, man. I think it's that wow factor, right? You're
Yeah.
chasing that high, right? Like, ooh, when you buy something and it's something that you always wanted, it's like, oh man, when you first get it, it's this amazing feeling. You get those endorphins released, and it's like, oh, you just feel so good about it. But that wears off so quickly,
Yep.
right? It's only the things that you're really passionate about that have lasting appeal. But there's not many things that you can buy, right, that gives you that lasting like feeling, right? Because I
Right.
don't care, even if the nicest of cars, even if you got your dream car tomorrow, it's no longer your dream car because you have it.
Right. Right.
Your brain is going to naturally get acclimated to this new thing, and then that new thing becomes the norm, and then now you're looking for the next new thing.
Right.
it's a
Right.
it's a hopeless like cycle that you get into, right? So
Yep.
when you get this extra income, it's very important to compartmentalize that natural urge to chase the next new thing or the biggest thing, right?
Yeah.
I remember we was talking about it, like it's several things we get into, right? Like, oh, we're
Yeah. Yeah.
into like grilling, or we're into whatever it is, cars, whatever it is you get into.
Right.
You want to get the best, right? You go on Google, you start
Yeah.
reading reviews, you start like, oh, which is the best of the best. But what are you gonna do with the best of the best? Like, what?
Right.
Like, why do you need the best of the best?
Right. Like, it's just that, they call it FOMO, fear of missing out. Like, oh man, if I get this lesser version, the better version gonna have a feature that I really want, and I'm gonna regret getting this lesser version because, oh, I'm missing out. But
Yeah,
you know, I kind of feel like, okay, there's a, like, what was it called, like an optimal value point to where,
yeah,
okay, you're when you spend this amount of money, you're getting the best quality you can, and then
for the
above
best
that
value,
is
right?
just, yeah, the
It's
best
like a
value.
they call it diminishing return.
Yeah, diminishing returns. Above
Yeah.
that point, you're just paying for the name. Like, like,
Mhm.
okay, say for example, you want to buy a T-shirt, maybe at $30. The $30 T-shirt is way better than the $5 T-shirt because the
Right.
material is way more sturdy. But now you buy the $200 Versace T-shirt, like there's no extra value there. It's just a name, brand
Yeah,
name.
it's just a name. As a matter of
Yeah,
fact, if you're not careful, you actually could lose quality in lieu of the name, right? Like, I see stuff
exactly.
all the time, like luxury, quote unquote. luxury brands and so forth and so on, and the quality don't seem that much better, right? Like,
Yeah.
okay, where are these things being made? They're probably being made in the same factory and just getting a different name on it, and you over here paying 10 times as much for what?
Exactly.
Like, but that's that money game that a lot of people get trapped in when you start making money, right? Like, oh
Right.
well, I need to show people that I'm making money. Now I don't wear my money. I just
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah. I mean, because if you start wearing your money, you're gonna attract people that ain't really into you. They into
Mm,
the fact that they can be around the big shot and
yeah,
maybe see what they can get. Like,
yeah.
if I don't like you and now you put on a fancy shirt, now I like you. Like, do I really like you? I like
I like that
the
shirt.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that um this is not a shot at our industry at all, because I mean I'm a part of it, you're a part of it,
Yeah.
but I also feel like a lot of people in our industry don't socialize as much, right?
Yeah.
The average coder isn't just this social butterfly or whatever the case may be. And so when you start making, some money, and then you start getting this attention, you start, getting these new friends or so forth and so on, you start hanging out with this new crowd, it's easy to kind of fall victim to this new level of
Right.
desirability, right? And so that's another thing that comes with making more money, is not just the money itself, but the image that you portray with said money, right?
Right. So did,
So
did you
managing
find
it is,
like once you got to the next level of income, like okay, you're dealing with a higher level of women,
mm,
you're dealing with more friends or whatever, or was it pretty much the same for you?
oh man, I can only say this from my, from my perspective. I was already like a very confident person,
Yeah.
and that's just in my personality. So the money didn't add anything to me. I don't feel like it changed a lot, because I had a good handle on it. I was already sociable. I was already, very outgoing, outspoken, um, like life of the party type person. It
Hmm.
just happens to be that now, right? Because I don't, again, I'm not like flashy. I'm not a flashy
Yeah.
person. So me making, six figures and being around my peers or whatever, that's not, you can't tell the difference. We all look the same.
Right.
We all act the same. We all, so I'm not, again, so it didn't change because I didn't change.
Yeah.
But I also can say that it does bring on a certain level of self discipline and a self respect, right?
Yeah.
You gotta learn who you are, right? You got to learn that this isn't something that I'm doing for other people. This is something that I'm doing for myself. This is something that I'm doing for the people that I love, right? Like
Right.
my
Right.
family, for example, my children. I want to provide them with something more. I want to do more for people around me. And so that also kept me in check.
Right, right. Yeah, like you mentioned, like just having the money is not going to bring this whole new caliber of things. It's what you do with the money, because coding is not really a quote unquote sexy career that
Right.
that women just flock to. Like you say, okay, I'm a doctor or
Yeah.
high paying lawyer, or I'm a DJ. Oh,
Right.
okay, hey. You said software engineer. Okay, that's cool. How's your dogs been?
so you know what's funny though? Like in my older age, as I mature, I feel like women at a older age respect the the intellect a lot more.
Yeah,
Like when you young, you come out, you 20, 24, 25, whatever, like in your 20s. Man, I think what you're saying is spot on, man. But what you realize is that as you get older, the respect level of like software engineers, like, oh, you smart, like, and they
right,
respect
right.
the fact that you are intelligent, like, and I'm not just saying that you just get a pass because you're a software engineer, but I will say this: it's it's a level of respect that you kind of don't realize you have, because a lot of people around me, they respect me, right?
Right,
And
right, right.
it's because of my level of mental prowess, right? Like it's not that, oh, it's a glamorous position, but it's like I couldn't like the way that this is what people think. Like, oh, it couldn't be me. I couldn't do that. Like, so it's the fact that you're doing something that what they would assume the average person couldn't do. Right. So that's
Right,
where your
right.
respect level come from.
Yeah, so it's a respectable career. It's not a sexy
Flash.
career. It's
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
respectable.
Well, I make
You
it sexy. You know what I'm talking
right.
about? Hey,
You got to go.
nobody ever. It's crazy, man. Because every time I tell somebody what I do, like even in my neighborhood, like when I first moved here, a lot of people like, man, what do you do? You know, like, and then they all
Right, right, right.
like, and instantly they either think I'm an entertainer or I play sports or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm just like, no, I'm a software engineer. Really? I guess I
Right,
don't
right.
look like a software engineer. I guess I just don't have that look. I don't know what a software engineer is supposed to look like, but obviously it's not me, right?
No, I think we kind of take it for granted though, because to us, we've been in it so long. It's like, oh yeah, you could probably do it. It ain't that hard. But to them, they're like, nah, man, that gives me a headache. I'm scared of that.
Right.
Like, but whereas we've been in it long enough, we've seen a lot of the stuff, a lot of the issues. So we're
Yeah.
just repeatedly solving the same problem. So it's not as intimidating to us as it is them. So yeah, like you say, they respect your intellect.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And I'm not gonna say that I feed into it a lot, but I do pride myself on that, right? Like I do realize that although this is very approachable, don't get me wrong. I honestly feel like anybody can get into the coding industry. All you need to do is just be diligent and take it on. Like just have the desire to learn it, right? It's not something that's like, being a mechanic or, a very technical thing, even though it's a tech job, it's like learning a language, right? Like learning how to speak, right? Like a lot of people might say, "Oh, it's probably hard to learn a second language," right? Like, if you want to learn Italian or you want to learn, Spanish or French or whatever the case may be, or Japanese or whatever. Like, um, I think that when people think about coding, they think that it's so unapproachable, and it actually is very approachable. It's people that learn on their own. Like I learned coding on my own before I actually got a degree in software, but I didn't get it in actual like web development or JavaScript or anything like that. I didn't go to school for that. I went to school for game and simulation programming, right?
Right, right.
But I learned JavaScript or TypeScript or all these frameworks like Angular, React. I learned all those things on my own, and I leveraged my knowledge to gain this opportunity. So technically, I didn't even go to school for this.
Right, right, right. Yeah, I think we are just like mentally acclimated to this industry because I've tried to put other people on, and they just don't really take to it. You know what
Mm,
I mean?
yeah,
Like it might, certain things just come easy to certain people. For example, some people can just hear a song, go to the piano, start playing it. Like
right.
I can't, I don't have any musical talent, so
Yeah,
it's easy for them, but you know what I'm saying. Like for me,
right,
it's very difficult. Whereas I kind of feel like with coding, to us, I'm not gonna say it's easy, but how we approach it doesn't seem impossible. Like
right.
taking on new challenges. Whereas to somebody who doesn't have that kind of inclination, it's really challenging and really intimidating.
Yeah, I do feel like you have to have a level of to some degree. Like well, let me take this. Let me take that back. You don't have to, right? You can just come in and just learn it, not have a passion for it, and just literally just grind your way through it, right?
Right.
Learning it isn't the hard part. I feel like staying consistent with it and actually taking it on, because coding is an art to me. And I look at it as an art. I'm creating. I'm using my craft to build and create things. And so that's where my passion comes from. But somebody who just is chasing the dollar, yeah, you can go to school or you can go to YouTube or some type of tutorial or class and learn how to code. But I feel like
Yeah.
if you don't at some point love what you do, you'll get burnt out really quick, or you will
Yeah.
find it difficult to stay like ingrained or acclimated to this industry. It's not something that's for everybody. I definitely
Exactly.
agree with that. But it's
Yeah. That's
definitely approachable by anybody.
That's that's something. The other Brian, he said, hey, I got in here. I had to try to learn it on my own, and I just found out it wasn't for me. I didn't like it. I wasn't enjoying myself, and
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't getting any help. It wasn't for me.
Yeah.
So, I think, learning the basics of programming, yeah, anybody can do it. Like a loop is this, a conditional is this. But when you start getting into the deeper constructs, say, for example, on Angular, like RxJS, NGRX, and utilizing that to construct a cohesive system, that's
Right.
not really something anybody can do. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it takes a strategic thinking ability to be able to put together a complicated system and not have everything come crumbling down.
Yeah. I usually acclimated to like Legos, right? Like I love Legos as a kid. And the coolest thing about Legos to me is that although yes, you're giving me these pieces, I can make what I want out of said pieces. I can
Right,
give this kid the same box of Legos as this kid, and they might build two completely different things. And neither thing that they built is wrong, right, or indifferent. Like it's just what they created with what they were given. And coding is very much so like that.
right,
And just because you give somebody some Legos and they put some stuff together, don't mean that what they put together is useful or even
yeah,
functional, right? But it does take a certain level of skill and vision to be able to take these pieces, aka frameworks, and then put these different components together to build what it is that your vision or somebody else's vision is, which that's what coding is to me.
right. Yeah, creating something that's performant, it aligns with the criteria of the client. The code is easily changeable and adaptable if need be. Say, for example, you want to switch out this database with some other database, you have to structure
Yeah.
things ahead of time to make that feasible. So like just doing basic coding, yeah, anybody can do that, but to create highly performant scalable systems, that's where our value really comes in, and that's where you have to have an expertise about yourself.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with that 100%, man. And I don't consider myself an expert, but I do know that I know what I'm doing. Like,
Right.
and can't nobody tell me different. And I think that I've proven myself time and time again in every position that I've been in, and even in my own projects, like my personal projects. Like, I know what it takes, and I don't have to know everything to be proficient or very efficient at what I'm doing.
Exactly. And it's an attitude game too, because a lot of times you're going to get stuck on a problem, and if you don't have the right attitude, you're going to give up. You have
Mhm.
to have the attitude of, yeah, the solution's out there somewhere. There's a
Mm.
way to do this. I
Yeah.
just have to stick with it until I figure it out.
Absolutely. And I think that's like another part of coding that I love is problem solving. I'm a problem solver. And I'm gonna be honest, in everything I do, I'm trying to figure something out. Like I love that. Um, I love being able to create, but I also love being able to um like figure out how certain pieces and things come together.
Absolutely. Um, Yeah, me particularly, I'm not like the biggest puzzle fan, but I think I'm more of a builder. I just like building stuff. I
Mm,
like having this idea in my mind and being able to make it come true. Like, 'cause, I was always into video games as a kid, and I always wanted to know how can I make my own video game.
yeah.
That's pretty
But
much what got me into wanting to learn how to code.
code.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
So didn't you work on a game before? I thought didn't you work on a game before, like for in your own personal time?
yeah. I dabbled with it, but I never really stuck with it. I didn't have the creativity to, like, oh, I got this world in my head, I need to put it on paper, and I'm gonna just stick with it. I think I went down all these different side paths too, because I was
Mm.
was fighting with myself, like, should I go down this game programming route, or should I learn like what's more relevant to the career?
Right, right. Um, yeah, and so that's one of those balancing acts that's difficult to master, right? Like you want to go down these paths of learning, right? Like for you, he was like, okay, I want to build a game, but is that actually furthering my career? Is that actually valuable to me?
Yeah.
Will I ultimately be able to use what I'm learning now to be able to further my career? And that's a huge balancing act, because at that point it just becomes a side project, right? Not just a
Yeah.
side project in the context of I'm just doing something just to do it, but if you really want it to be something, right? Like if you're just creating a game just to learn how to do it, then what, right? What do you do
Right.
with
Right.
that? Like, why am I actually trying to learn how to do this? Is that going to allow me to leverage this knowledge to further myself in some kind of way to benefit myself, or is it just to say that I've done it?
Right.
And
Right.
yeah, like I've done that too. Like, but I do feel like when you're in this industry, being very diligent about learning new technologies is important, so that you don't,
Yeah.
get stagnant and that you stay relevant.
Yeah. Exactly. In regards to that game development point, man. You know, I didn't have a burning desire. Like I didn't have this all the game, mechanics in my head, all the
Mhm.
characters, and it's just like, oh, I just need to code it. It was just me sitting there struggling, like, man, what should this character be? What should it do?
Yeah,
And it never really just clicked with me. It never really came to me. So I just, kind of just fell off. And
yeah,
we was at the point in our careers where this new bit of knowledge could get us tens of thousands of extra dollars. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I learned this framework, or I learned DevOps or something, and this job, I could get this job over here, and it's paying me 160K versus 130. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
obviously that's going to take precedence, since we're not at a point to where, okay, we just have $1 million in the bank, so
yeah. I wish. No, but that you make a good point. I think that a lot of times when you're in the, when you're a coder, it has to make dollars, right? Just it can't just be all for nothing, right? Like
right.
you get into this mode of, if I learn something, it needs to benefit me in some way, shape, form, or fashion. Uh, like there were times even before I actually broke into this industry where I would, build websites, and I was just intrigued. And I was, doing very primitive thing, and I call it primitive now, and it's weird because it still exists. But like jQuery, um, when I first learned that, like that was my first, intro to JavaScript, and it was just some cool things. You kind of manipulating the DOM directly and interacting with these different elements and so forth and so on, and you're learning this, you're learning that, and then shortly after I started learning that, like, and there was no benefit to it. I wasn't a coder. I wasn't in the industry like that. But what it taught me is that this industry is changing so vastly, so fast.
Yeah.
Because shortly after I started dabbling with jQuery, Angular came around, and it just completely just blew the industry's doors off, right? Like,
Yep.
um, in my from my experience, that was like the first real framework, right? It's kind of like Ford being the first real production vehicle, right? Like, and it's just something about that, to be at the cusp of its introduction and being a component of that, like that got me into the industry. Like working with Angular made me want to code more, like,
Right.
and that's what made me want to chase this opportunity, and here I am.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing about the industry back then, maybe even 6 or 7 years back, was browser compatibility. That's one of
Mm.
the things that made front end development a nightmare. Okay, it works on every browser, it doesn't work on Internet Explorer, and then or you can't
Oh,
use that solution, or
yeah,
you know what I mean. It was a
yeah,
nightmare.
yeah.
And,
I think that that's another part of it, right? Like, again, staying relevant, staying connected to the ever changing industry. Like, you're looking at like things like compatibility, and when you're trying to preserve that for this particular project, it's not as big of an issue as it was then now, just because most modern browsers support, most of the leading edge JavaScript capabilities. But at the end of the day, it's still something that you may need to support. Like, I don't know who's still using IE, and no disrespect to if you are still using IE, but I don't even know if IE still exists. I know they got Edge, but is
Right,
IE
right.
even still a thing? Right? Maybe in government or something.
Yeah,
Like,
some like legacy government computers.
hey, whoever out there using IE, man, get off of it. Let me tell you right now. Get,
Right.
get, get your together. Get your stuff together.
Yeah, that was a nightmare, man. But yeah, like you mentioned in tech, you have to continually study to stay relevant. It's not like, maybe some industries you go to college, you learn something, and you coast on that knowledge for the rest of your career. With
Yeah,
tech, you learn something, it might be good for a couple of years, and then boom, something new comes out. If you
yeah.
don't learn it, you're now legacy.
So, so do you feel? Because I've taken on several um like leads to incorporate a new technology,
Mm,
all the way from back at Consult More when I proposed using NGRX, right? Like that was a completely new thing then. And as far as the Angular world, like for React, it was, Redux was
yeah,
a normal thing. But when NGRX came out, that was kind of bridging that gap. That was introducing the Redux pattern to Angular. And I was intrigued, man. And um, that's just an example of when I had to, well, not had to, but I wanted to like lead the charge on incorporating this into this code base. Like, hey, let's check it out. It's happened several times since then, but like you say, like all this new technology coming out, or these new versions, or whatever the case may be, new frameworks, new libraries, just new patterns of ways to do things, new stacks. Like when you have all of these things changing, like I think that it's important to lead the charge, like be that person at your company, like or
yeah,
in your projects, and like try new things. Like don't be afraid to embark on that journey and show that initiative, right? Like
yeah.
yeah, take it on, man.
Yeah, I mean, being proactive, that's how you go from just being a developer to being in leadership of some form of fashion, to where you're adding value. You're not just doing what the requirements state. You're able to kind of analyze like the code base where it's at, and you're able to bring in either technologies or principles or paradigms that improve the code base. It makes things more maintainable. It makes things more performant.
Right.
You're able to do things without somebody prompting you to do. That's a very important
Mhm.
skill to have. And couple that with EQ, which is emotional intelligence, and you'll really go far, because a lot of software engineers, they're not good at communicating, and they just kind of do what they're told. So if you want to
Yeah.
distinguish yourself, combine those two elements.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that's what I pride myself on in a lot of ways, is that I'm not just leading with my know-how, right? I'm leading with who I am as a person, right? Like you have to sell yourself, no different than a product sells itself. When they market, they trying to show you the best pieces of, or the best features, or the best utilization of this particular product. Well, you have to do the same thing with yourself. You're not
Yeah,
just selling what you're doing, because anybody can do what you're doing, but nobody can be who you are, right? Like you have to be more than just a coder. You have to be you. And I think that when you couple that and find yourself in what you're doing, oh man, you're unstoppable. I mean, I feel like
yeah.
Superman sometimes when I go into interviews, just because I'm just that confident, not in what I know, but who I am.
Hmm. Yeah, that's very important. Just being able to exude. You don't have to be cocky, but you have to realize that you are bringing value to the table, and you have to communicate that. You can't be afraid to say, "I'm capable of doing this. I'm going to add this value to your organization." And
Hmm.
once you get there, you have to do the same thing, because nobody knows what you can do unless you show it to them. You're a constant marketer. If you don't market, then nobody's gonna know. Like you go to the grocery store, you're gonna grab Coke or Sprite because you know them. There could be some amazing soda on the bottom shelf there, but you never
Hmm.
reach for it because you don't know it.
Right, right. And I think that that's a perfect example of like showing yourself beyond just what your label says, right? Like you said, could be a perfectly great soda that's way better than Coke or Sprite, right? But you would never know because you're gonna just lean toward what you know, the brands that you recognize. Well, if you're a new brand coming to the market, you have to put yourself out there in a way that is different than the way that the people that are already established are doing, right? Because you're up against a lot of competition, especially now more than ever,
Yeah.
especially with the shift of technology and coding becoming more and more important and more sought after and more like this market is become, for the lack of better word, saturated, right?
Yeah.
Like you've seen it, I've seen it, and we've been in this industry for 10 years or so. Like, so when you're looking at where the market is today versus where it was, like back then it was easy. Like you didn't have
Yeah.
to really sell anything because the market was like so wide open. But now it's such a tight window. It's a lot more people and coders available than the actual positions, right?
Right.
And then not only that, but the requirements of said positions have risen like to ridiculous levels. Like even for like junior level, like they're expecting you to have like 2 3 years experience, or they want you to know all these algorithms. And I'm like, what? Like, what are you talking about? Like, we're creating web applications. Why
Right.
we're not, but that's just where it's shifting to. So yes, you definitely have to separate yourself from the pack. And I think the only way to do that is by your personality and not just
Yeah.
trying to sell again your technical, you know,
Yeah.
uh, abilities, but also your communication skills, how your interpersonal, skills. Like, how do I interact with other people? Like that. That's also
Yeah.
super important.
Yeah, you have to get beyond just defining yourself by your technical specialty. You don't want to be the JavaScript guy, the Angular guy. You want to be the solutions architect. You want to be the guy that gets things done. Okay, there's a problem with the app. The app is breaking. You're the one they go to say, "Hey, what's wrong with this?" Because you're able to either diagnose the code or reach out to the appropriate parties and get it done. So
Yeah.
ultimately you're finding a way to solve the problem. That's what you have to bring to the table if you really want to progress nowadays. And
Yeah.
you have to, you have to bring leadership and you have to bring strategic thinking.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because those two things and to me are two of the most integral pieces of this what we call software engineering, right? Like a lot of people are like, "Oh, you're an engineer, you're an engineer." Yes, but you can be an engineer of anything these days, right? Like you can add the word engineer to the end of any anything. I think that what it really comes down to is, like you said, your ability to problem solve. And I feel like that's what I've gravitated to. Like that's my
Right.
favorite thing to do. Like even in things that are not software engineering related, it could be a DIY project at the house. So, I could be fixing a leaky faucet, or I could be, building a planter box, or it doesn't matter what I'm doing. I'm always solving a problem and being able to solve problems and create like at the same time. So you can look at it from two different ways. You're either solving a problem or you're creating a solution. So
Yeah.
solving a problem is more reactive. The problem already exists, right? And so you solve said problem. Creating
Right.
solutions can come from a place of I'm creating a solution to a problem that may not even exist yet,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so that's where you allow yourself to be malleable and say, I'm going to provide value in this way versus another way. But at the end of the day, you're still providing value.
Exactly. You don't want to be a biological code generator, meaning, okay, yeah, I just know how to code some stuff up, because now AI is coming to the picture. And I believe there was a news story that Google says like 25% of their new code is coming from AI. So,
Yeah.
a lot of the jobs the juniors would have had before, AI is doing it. And as it gets more and more intelligent, more and more of that code is going to be generated from AI. So it's like, what can you do to react to that? Because a lot of people are going to lose their jobs because they're just technicians. They're not somebody who's thinking strategically, like, how can I leverage everything available to me to get this particular result?
Right. Right.
They're just a cog in this specific problem domain, and you don't want to be that.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's hard, for a lot of people to not fall victim to that, just simply because especially when you first get in, right? Like, you're just happy to be here. I'm just here.
Yeah,
I'm just happy to be here. Like, I got my opportunity. What do I need to do to just, maintain, right? And so many people are just comfortable and complacent with just doing enough.
yeah,
And I think if you actually lead, right, with your desire to be great, right, and it doesn't mean that you have to be, the next, Bill Gates or the next Steve Jobs or whatever the case may be, but you just have to want to be better than you were yesterday, right?
yeah,
How can I further myself? How can I develop myself? Because developing code is easy. How do I develop myself, right? How
yeah,
do I become bigger, greater, better, and advance myself? Because this technology is advancing. How do I advance, right?
yeah.
And I think that's an important factor if you're going to be in this industry, is to not just develop code, but develop yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Stagnancy is your ticket right on out of this industry,
Yeah,
because if you're not learning new skills, if you're not stepping up, there's countless hungry people waiting to take your lunch, and it's all across the world. A lot of our jobs can be done remotely, so they can just ship it overseas and get it done, for a fraction of the cost. So what
hmm,
are you bringing to the table that differentiates you from either AI generated code or from, code in nations where it's much cheaper? So
yeah,
you're going to differentiate yourself by quality of code, strategic thinking, your ability to manage people, your ability to communicate. Like, we're in a time where you have to bring something different to the table, or else you're going to
absolutely.
get washed out. And that goes into that personal development point that you made.
Oh, absolutely, man. I think that um, coming into your own, right, making your mark, you have to want more, right? Um, you have to better yourself. You have to advance. And when you're really trying to learning is a two-stage process. It's not just about taking in the information, it's about applying the information, right? You can't just say, oh, I learned how to cook, if you've never actually turned on a stove, or you've never fired up a grill, or you've never actually done it. Because in that process of doing, you learn even more, because what's on paper or what you were lectured about, you actually get the experience of doing. And we just have to continue to be a product of our product. So I know we were talking about, making money, and a lot of people are attracted to coding because it's an easy way to six figures. However, I still think that in the grand scheme of things, you have to make the money and not allow the money to make you.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you don't like this industry enough to keep on learning, that six figures ain't gonna be there for long, because
Mhm.
this new set of technology is gonna come into place. The technology you're using is gonna be obsolete, and either they're gonna let you go, or you're probably gonna have to take a pay cut. So
Yeah,
this is a learning industry. And yeah, man, we're almost at the top of the hour. Did you have any closing thoughts you wanted to leave the audience with?
man, I think we said it out. I liked what I said just a while ago, man. Make the money. Don't let the money make you.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to elaborate on that, once you get that money, Brian said, don't let it make you, don't let it change your personality. Just do what you're already doing now, and do something with that money, because you don't want to look back and just spent it on these material goods, and now you have nothing to show for it.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah, man, we appreciate everybody for tuning in. We'll catch y'all next time. Peace.
Absolutely.